Now, before I begin, I want to say the following. Normally, I don't do requests, and the reason for that is that the people who are making the requests are not the people who are helping to support this channel monetarily. Therefore, I don't do requests. However, this one was kind of interesting. This was a request made by David Wills, and I thought it was interesting because it hasn't really been done all that much before, and that is, can you make a wine based on a video game? Now, the video game in question is one where you are directing your character through a maze. And in the process of going through the maze, you're gobbling up a series of dots. In addition to the dots, you're going to be gobbling up a series of fruit, all while trying not to be eaten by the enemies out there who are trying to do you in. Turns out that there are 5 fruit involved in this particular game. And those fruits are going to be cherry, strawberry, orange, apple, and melon. So the question was, can you make a wine based on this fruit? And I decided to go ahead and give it a try. So therefore, here we go. Now, starting out, we're going to need 1 melon. And I've decided to portion out the amounts based on the amount of the points that each fruit represents. In this particular case, a melon represented 1,000 points. Okay, easiest way of doing that, even though this is an imperial measurement society here in the US, I decided to use 1,000 grams to equate to 1,000 points. I'm going to be using approximately 700 grams of apples. I'm going to be using 500 grams of orange. I'll need 300 grams of strawberries, and I'm going to be using 100 grams of cherries. Now, because I'm still getting back to basics, we'll need a package of active dry yeast, the original, of which we'll be using 1/4 teaspoon for fermentation, and we will be using 1/4 teaspoon as a yeast nutrient. We'll need 1 lemon, of which we will be using just 1/4 of it, and it's going to act as our acid blend substitute, which will give our wine a little bit of acidity, a little bit of brightness. And even though it's not going to be on the ingredients list, if you want to add some additional tannin, which will give your wine some additional mouthfeel, some astringency on the back end, you can use the black tea bag method, which I'm not going to be using here. No particular reason, just decided not to do it. A couple of straining bags to hold all our fruit. This, of course, is optional, entirely up to you. We'll need 1 gallon of filtered water. Your choice of water is entirely up to you, just as long as it's clean and drinkable. We will need a wide mouth fermenter, or container that has a wide opening so that we can get our fruit and straining bag into. We will need a 1 gallon carboy jug, demijohn, take your pick, which will help us out when we're doing secondary fermentation for the long haul. We will need an airlock with bung, and we need that airlock so that CO2 can escape and so that bugs can't get in, and that will go into our secondary fermenter. I should point out that this particular fermenter does have its own built-in airlock, so I will not be using it for that. But if you don't have one of these, then make sure that your primary fermenter does have an airlock. It would be helpful, although optional, to have a hydrometer with testing tube. And the reason for the hydrometer is to give us a starting gravity, or the amount of sugar that's current in our must from the get-go. And then based on the amount of sugar that remains at the end of the process, we can determine how much alcohol by volume we have created. And of course, last but certainly not least, we need a food-grade sanitizer of choice, whether it's One Step, Star San, or whatever. We want to make sure that all of our equipment has been properly cleaned and sanitized before we begin. Hey, did I mention that we're probably going to need some sugar? Listen, let's set aside at least 3, maybe 4 cups of sugar, and we'll work out exactly how much we're going to need later on. And that is what we're going to be using to make this pack wine. Now, let's go ahead and begin by slicing up our melon so that we can begin removing the seeds, of which we will not be using. And let's go ahead and slice them up, smallest chunks as possible. And we'll begin the process of going ahead and weighing these out because we need approximately 1,000 grams to equal our 1,000 points, which is the game equivalent. Okay, we're getting pretty close, and if I can keep the fruit in the bowl, we will soon have more than our 1,000 points. So let's slice this one down a little bit, and there we go, 1,000 grams. Now for the apples, we're going to do this way. We're going to go ahead and peel the apples. And having done that, I want to core the apples as best as possible. Don't really need the seeds. Yeah, we don't really need these guys. So we just cut around those. And later on, once I've got them all peeled and cored, I'm going to give them a good chop. The smaller, the better. Okay, we want to make sure that these apples are chopped pretty fine. And let's go ahead and add this last one to the measuring scale. All right, after chopping up these apples as finely as I can get them, let's go ahead and top this off. Here we go, 700 grams. Now for the oranges, I think what I'm going to do is first I'm going to zest the oranges, and then I am going to juice the remaining to come up with my 500 grams. All right, let's get this on a scale and let's see what we come up with. Here we go, 500. Now then, moving on to the strawberries, let's get rid of all of this green foliage. And let's go ahead and give our strawberries, let's remove all of this green stuff here, the unripened portion. And as far as the strawberries are concerned, I'm going to go ahead and break these down as well. Here, I think just a rough chop is all you're really going to need. And let's go ahead and weigh these up. Oh, look at that. Right on time. All right, there is our 300 points worth of strawberries. Wait a minute. I lost a gram. Huh. There we go. Now I got it back. Okay, we only need 100 grams of cherries to represent the 100 points that the cherries are worth. This not being cherry season, all I can have are frozen cherries, so they will work just fine. And all we need to do is just measure it out. Oh, I need to make a small portion here using this cherry. Uh-huh. Almost. Oh, fine, don't turn over there. There we go, 100 grams. And that, my friends, is all we need to represent the points that each fruit represents. Now we need to do is get these things into the straining bags. All right, this shouldn't be too hard, hopefully. These are small 1 gallon straining bags, starting with the melon. Ah, okay. Cherries. And as for our orange juice and zest, I'm going to add those a bit later while we're over the pot over the stove. Because let's just be honest, this is liquid. It's just going to strain out the pulp and flow right through the bag. All right, we're going to take about 3/4 of our water, or thereabouts, and let's go ahead and put that in the pot. Roughly 3/4, actually more than that. There you go, roughly 3/4. No need to be precise. And following that, let's go ahead and let's bring that up to a boil. Well, now that it looks like our water has come up to a boil, a nice good rolling boil, we want to do something that might be counterintuitive to some people, and that is we're going to add in some of our bread yeast. And the reason why we're going to add our bread yeast in now is because we need this bread yeast to be dead. And we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of our bread yeast. Go ahead and add that in. And let that boil for a few seconds just to make sure that all of the yeast is dead. And in its dead state, the live yeast that we're going to add in later when everything is cooled down is going to use that yeast as food or as a nutrient to help the fermentation process go along pretty good. Adding in our fruit, starting with our melon, strawberries and berries. And we're going to add in our apples in just a moment here. Thing about the apples is that I really should have put some of those apples in that smaller strawberry cherry bag because it's getting a little full. And if I can get in our orange juice and pulp without spilling it all over the pot. There we go. Get that all in there. And let's see if I can tie off this straining bag. Yeah, there's no hiding it. I'm struggling a little bit trying to get this knot. But yeah, good enough. That'll do it. All right, now that it's in there, we want to put our lid back on. And before we do that, let's add in some of our juice that kind of seeped out of the bags. And then we're going to put our lid back on, and we're going to let this come down to room temperature. Now that our mixture has come down to room temperature, I've decided to go ahead and add in the remainder of our 1 gallon of water. I know that the fruit is going to dissolve and release some of its own natural juices, but I'd rather have just a little bit more than a gallon than not enough. And I'm going to go ahead and incorporate that in. Doesn't hurt to mash down on some of these fruit straining bags. And let's get that incorporated. Because the next thing I want to do, since we haven't added any additional sugar, is I want to take an initial hydrometer reading to see where I stand, to help me determine how much additional sugar I want to add to get me an ABV, alcohol by volume, that I want to have roughly towards the end. Okay, and it looks like my initial hydrometer reading is going to be, now that I've added in that water, riding pretty low. At about 1.012. All right, based on that initial gravity reading and my desired gravity reading of about 1.080 and my desired ABV of about 12.5%, after running the numbers, it looks like I'm going to be needing to add approximately 820.4 grams of sugar, or that translates into 28.9601 ounces, or about 3.62 cups of sugar. So now that I know what my numbers are, and bear in mind, I am mindful of the fact that there's probably going to be some more sugar released by the fruit, I'm going to go ahead and add my sugar. Might as well just dump it in there. It would have been great had I known these numbers while the must was still hot, or at least warm, to make dissolving the sugar that much easier. But hey, now I know, now I can do it. There we go, that's now been fully incorporated. Now let's go ahead and take what's going to be our original gravity reading. See how close we came to the mark. Not bad. Looks like our initial gravity reading that we'll be using is going to be 1.078. Close enough. Now I should point out that this is actually going to put us over 1 gallon because of the addition of the 3.5 cups of sugar. And that's actually going to be okay, because what's going to happen is that when we finally do rack this out of the primary fermenter into secondary, we're going to end up with extra. And we can then take that extra musk and we can actually freeze that, so that when we're doing subsequent rackings later on, instead of having to try and come up with fine juice that's going to make up the difference to reduce the headspace, we can just simply thaw out some of our extra musk and use that instead, so that there's no loss in flavor. Now let's go ahead and get our acid blend substitute prepared, which is basically, in our case, 1/4 of a lemon. Trying to ensure that we don't get any seeds in the mix. That's pretty seedless. And all we need to do is really just to squeeze the lemon. We don't need to scrape off the sides or anything. Quarter of a lemon per gallon seems to be about a pretty decent balance. So I'll just simply add this to the mix. Now to begin the actual process of turning our juice into wine, we need to add our yeast. Again, this is a quarter of a teaspoon of yeast. I don't know if you can see that or not, but try and sprinkle it around kind of evenly, mixing as many of the bags as possible. In fact, because of the bags being in the way, let's just go ahead and kind of incorporate that yeast a bit. In fact, let's take that opportunity to just go ahead and give it kind of a little stir. Help out that yeast a little bit with just a little bit of oxygen at the beginning. And let's go ahead and put our lid back on. Take the opportunity to point out that this particular fermenter does have a built-in airlock, so I don't need to use a bubbler type of airlock for this fermenter. Now at this time, we should go ahead and label our creation with some basic information so that we know later on down the road what we're making. We are making what I'm calling a pac-wine, which is a arcade-based wine using the fruits found in that arcade game. We started on this date, 11/24/22, and our starting gravity was approximately 1.087. And I say approximately because that might increase a little bit as the remaining fruit release some of its sugars. All right, so what happens next? Well, for the next 3 days, at least once, sometimes twice a day, you might want to go in and go ahead and submerge your fruit. Make sure that everything stays nice and wet. It doesn't hurt to give it a little stir. Incorporate just a little bit more oxygen into the mix. First 3 days is fine doing that. I wouldn't suggest doing that after the first 3 days. We are going to let the fruit sit in the primary fermenter for 7 days total, which should be enough time for it to break down as much of the fruit as possible. After that, we are going to rack it into our secondary container. And then we will continue the process of racking from one container into the next every 6 or 8 weeks or so until the wine has either gone clear or until we've decided that enough time has passed. I pick an arbitrary number of about 12 months, during which time I'll probably end up bottling it. And there's a process involved for doing that as well. Again, you can find all of these operations in the winemaking operations, which is a playlist on my channel page. Please feel free to check it out. Now, of course, if you like what you see here, please click on that subscribe and notify button so I can continue to do these videos on a more regular basis. Better yet, become a member. Help support this channel so I can pay for this fruit. Either that or become a Patreon, but in any event, any appreciation will be helped. There's also a thanks button down at the bottom of the video. Please click on that if you want to just make a donation on a video by video basis. So until then, 12 months from now, I'll see you then. Okay, it's now been 12 months since we started making our pac-wine, wine that was based on the fruit that was found in a popular video game, Pac-Man. A couple of particulars. DIY Fermentation pac-wine, born 11/24/2022. ABV came in at 11.55%. Yes, it was back sweetened, and as a result of that, it's been pasteurized. The wine itself went very, very clear. Don't know if you can tell on that on camera, how close I can get it, but basically, yeah, the wine went clear. It's unfortunate, in my opinion, that asteroids could not come up with more interesting ingredients than rocks, because I'm an asteroids guy. But Pac-Man is what it was, so that's the one we made. Let's find out what it tastes like. It was bottled about 2 weeks ago. So let's go ahead and see what we got, because I know the first part of this video, at some 24 odd minutes long, was just too long. So we're gonna keep this one nice and short. Let's see. There we go. Let's go ahead and get this glass poured. This ought to do it. All right. The sniff test basically is to find out a couple of things. One, can you smell the fruit that was actually used? In this case, not really. And secondly, can you smell the amount? Can you smell the alcohol that was produced in the making of the wine? And you really can't smell it much. You really can't smell it. But sight and smells do not make a wine. It's what it tastes like. So if it doesn't taste right, I'm going to insert this real quick. Lately I've been getting asked by people who want to know what my top 5, top 3, top wines are. And normally I don't answer those questions because taste is relative, okay? When I taste this wine, and if it tastes great, I'll let you know. If it doesn't, I'm definitely going to let you know. But for me to have to go through my repertoire of wines and some 300 odd videos to determine which wines are great, I won't do that. I'll just let you know up front if it's great during the tasting or if it sucks, okay? Plain and simple. Where does this wine stand? You're really not tasting what is the word I guess I'm going to try using this time? Cacophony of fruit flavors. I think you can detect the melons that were used, the cantaloupe and the honeydew melons, the green ones and all of that. You can detect that. You can detect the acidity a bit. Kind of sort of slightly strawberries, but barely. You're really not tasting, it's more of a fruit punch than anything else, but you're really not tasting a really dominant flavor. In fact, in terms of flavor profiles, there's some wines that I've made like apple wine or cranberries or raspberries that have a definitely distinctive profile. A little goes a long way, and if I had to characterize it and put, say, those wines up top where you know what you're drinking versus water, okay, where you know what you're drinking, but you're not tasting anything. This wine, I would have to say it's roughly about here in terms of flavor profile. You're really not sure what it is you're drinking. You know you're drinking, you're drinking wine, but you can't really pin it down on a particular wine flavor. I mean, it's got a light body to it. It's not real light, but it's fairly light. I prefer slightly more viscous wine myself, but it's not bad. Overall, the flavors, because they're so light, I mean, this is, you have to be mindful of the fact that you can probably drink a lot of this, not being careful of the fact that it's got 11.55% ABV, alcohol by volume. So you have to be careful of that. But, I mean, as an experiment, I mean, it comes in the category of being okay. Okay? Would I make this again? Probably not. I mean, it's not bad. I'm not planning on dumping the remaining 4 bottles or anything like that. I mean, they're going to get drunk when I want something that's light, kind of refreshing, without being overwhelming, heavy body, something like that. That's where this wine comes into play. But again, as an experiment, it was a bit involved in terms of processing the fruit. But like I said, I'm going to try and keep this one short because of the length of the first part of this video. So there we go. That's kind of my take on making pac-wine. Yeah, that's my take on making pac-wine. So if you like what you see here, please click on that like and subscribe button. Make sure you click on notify. Become a member, become a Patreon, and support this channel out. Coming in, we're now into the holiday season. We just had Thanksgiving pass us by yesterday, day before yesterday. No, yesterday. Christmas is coming up, so this will probably be the last video for a little while. I don't know if I've got a taste testing videos coming up in December. I have to check and see what I did last December to find out for sure. But basically, I'm going to take a break. So until then, I will see you in the next video.